Hey everyone, welcome back to Launch Codes Football. My name is Chris.
And I'm Chelsea.
Today we've got episode 39, and on March 12th, I'm almost said third, I don't know why, March 12th, 2022, there has been a lot of bombshells of NFL news. Crazy moves, specifically with the quarterback position, it seems like. And we're just going to dive into it. I think there's a lot to talk about. But Chelsea, how are you feeling today?
Feeling pretty good. I don't have a quarterback right now, but that's okay. I'm not too salty about it.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah, we're gonna get right into that too. But let's start off with some honestly of the more tame news, in my opinion. Aaron
Just
Rodgers
crazy.
is staying with the Packers. He just decided to. He was like, I'm gonna stay home. I was kind of disappointed at first. I was not gonna lie, not because like I, just love to see him leave or hate the Packers, but I was like, it would have been cool to spice it up. But I guess if he wants to stay there, that's completely fine. I don't know. He I don't know if his team's gonna be very good, to be honest. They kind of are always good, but never great in the playoffs. So, and they're losing a lot of guys this year. So we'll see if they end up, as good as they even were this year. But Chelsea, what did you think of this?
Honestly, it surprised me. For 2 years, we've been dealing with this Aaron Rodgers drama, right? Was he gonna stay or was he gonna go, right? And he ended up working it out with the GM last year, signed a 1 year contract. Everyone thought, okay, this is it for the Packers. Like, you got 1 year of Aaron Rodgers left, and that's it. And then all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers is like, actually, LOL, I'm going to retire. And then he like contemplates retirement. Everyone thinks he's going to retire, which, I mean, he would be retiring on a high. I mean, he did win 2 MVPs in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a pretty good high to retire on. But he actually said LOL JK and signed back for 4 years, $200 million, making him the highest paid
Actually, I
player in
don't think he
NFL
signed
history.
that. He denied that he signed anything on his
Oh,
Twitter.
I remember. Well, it's somewhere around that mark. Like, it might not be exactly 200 million, but he got paid a lot of freaking money and is now one of the highest paid players in the league, which is really all that matters at this point.
Well,
It's a pretty crazy story. I mean, the arc that he took, I don't think anyone was expecting him to stay after everything that happened, but he did. So, more
mm-hmm.
of the same with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, that's true. And just to clarify, I'm sorry. Yeah, he said, just to quote him on his Twitter, he said, "Hey, everyone, just wanted to clear some things up." In all caps, yes, I will be playing with the at Packers next year. However, reports about me signing a contract are inaccurate, as are the supposed terms of the contract. I quote unquote signed. I'm very excited to be back. Hashtag year 18 with a few emojis. So it's kind of hard to tell, like through this, like whether I don't know. He says reports about me signing a contract are inaccurate, as are the supposed terms of the contract I quote unquote signed. So I
Okay, but
guess.
every major news outlet reported it. Literally all of them. So if there
Mm-hmm.
was not some degree of accuracy in some part of it, I feel like people wouldn't have reported it at all. Like, the money part probably isn't wholly accurate, but I could see the length being accurate.
I don't know. I think
He
what
doesn't actually sign with the Packers,
I think
joins
he it
Indianapolis.
sounds to me like he's just writing out his last year. I don't know what he's gonna do. No one knows what Rodgers is gonna do. I don't even know if Rodgers knows what he wants to do. And I think that's fair. Do we know what we want to do in life in general? Half the
No.
time I'm like, so just because they're rich doesn't mean they know either. So either way, I think this is like, yeah, I kind of feel you. I was like expecting him to just make this grand move.
It
And
was
then
going to
it's
be
just
so
like,
dramatic, and it was
I
just like,
know.
blah.
Is just like, I'm staying. I'm like, oh,
Oh,
but Packers fans are probably like, oh my gosh. Like, so yeah, crazy
Packers
stuff.
fans are having nightmares about going from two-time back-to-back MVP Aaron Rodgers to unproven third-year quarterback Jordan Love. So I imagine they are pretty happy
Yeah,
that Aaron is back. So
I agree. Well, now that we've got the quote unquote boring news out of the way,
Just
right?
to think that that's the boring news
I
after how
know.
dramatic it was, like that's the most boring. Like
I
I
know.
love football, dude.
I know it's great. So next, literally hours after that, Russell Wilson gets traded to Denver. And this is crazy to me. Seattle in return got Drew Lock, Noah Fant, tight end, defensive lineman Shelby Harris, and 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks and 1 fifth-round pick. I mean, they really traded the haul to get Russell Wilson. And then Denver, of course, gets Russell Wilson. They also get a 4th-round pick. Yay, the 4th-round pick. But rip Noah Fant, though. Like, I bet he was gonna have, like, I think he's a pretty good tight end, especially anybody who played fantasy. Like, he's a good tight end to have, and then just like
he's an Iowa product. They always put out good tight ends. They put out Fant, Hawkinson, and Kittle, all within the span of 10 years. That's pretty impressive.
So yeah, I think it is. And so just to give my take on this, because we asked who won the trade, I'm going to say Denver did. I think Seattle, like, yes, they're getting a lot back, but how many teams such as Cleveland and others have spent 10 plus years looking for that guy and they just never got them? And even before the Seahawks got Russell Wilson, they never really had that guy either. I mean, they've had like decent quarterbacks in the past. I mean, one that comes to mind is like the one that comes to mind for me, maybe I'm just wrong, is Matt Hasselbeck. And Matt Hasselbeck is, in my opinion, he's most well known for the game where he said, we're going to get the ball and we're going to score, and then proceeded to throw a pick 6 in overtime in the playoffs. So that's what I remember about Seattle quarterbacks. But I think that I don't know. I don't really know why Seattle did this. Like, Russell Wilson's not that old. Maybe he really wanted out, but we never saw any reports saying that. But I don't know. I think Denver wins this. I think now they're a playoff team and they can compete with the others in their division finally.
I don't know, man. I mean, they had to give up pretty much the house to get Russell Wilson. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like, Russell Wilson is a top 10 quarterback, and any team that's quarterback needy in the league is going to covet him simply because he is an established quarterback. He's very good. He's had a very solid career, like, he's a good quarterback. But last year, man, he looked like he was declining. I'm not going to lie. Like, some of the other years that he had, like, Russell Wilson, like, he had his injury, which obviously impacted it. But when he played, he just didn't look the same. And, maybe that was just due to, his morale being on the Seahawks. Maybe it was due to his injury, whatever. But I mean, he's over 30 now. I think he's 33 or something. So, still prime time when you're a quarterback, early 30s, you're still prime time. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like Denver, like, okay, if we're going to look at what they gave up, Drew Lock leaving, that doesn't matter. Like, that he was essentially just a throw in this trade.
Literally, they just needed a quarterback to take.
I think that Noah Fant is a huge loss because they have Albert O, who's another tight end who is not terrible, but Noah Fant was establishing himself as, a top 10 tight end if he's not already. I think that's a really big loss, especially if you consider how Jerry Jeudy and Sutton have had injury issues their entire career. Like, if one of them goes down and they don't have a tight end, and say they lose Melvin Gordon in free agency, like, that offense that, like, everyone's looking at being so good, it's not going to look so good anymore. Now, you obviously hope that they don't get injured, but I think that Noah Fant was a big, big loss. And I mean, I think that Shelby Harris matters too. I mean, they already lost Von Miller, who was an edge guy, right? They lost Shelby Harris. I mean, really, the biggest big name player on their defensive line now is Bradley Chubb, who, like, he's really good. But, when you lose Shelby Harris and Von Miller, Bradley Chubb's going to get double teamed every time, So I think that losing Fant and Harris matters more than I think people are giving credit for, because those two guys were really big pieces. And now they have holes. Now they have holes at end. They have holes at defensive tackle, and they have holes at tight end, which they're going to have to address. And they traded so many picks away. Like, how are you going to accurately address that unless you go out and spend money in free agency? Oh, wait, you can't really because you just took on Russell Wilson's contract, right? So like, it's really good that they got their guy. And I think that he's going to be really good in Denver. Like, I think that he can run that offense, that he can put up points. Like, I think that he's going to be stellar on that offense, but I just don't know how they're going to recoup those starters, you know, because those were big guys on that team. I mean, you know, most of the nation quite simply, you know, after Peyton Manning left, didn't really pay attention to Denver. Like, they're kind of like Indianapolis. Like, they're not like the Patriots or the Chiefs or, you know, whoever. They, you know, they only really get the headlines when they get the headlines. Like, people just don't talk about them to talk about them. But now they are. So I think that getting Russell Wilson was the right move. And I think that it makes them a playoff contender.
Yeah.
But I just worry, like, giving up all those picks, like, how are you going to fill the holes that's still on your team? Because if you look at their team, like, they have a good team. Like, they have 2 good running backs. I'd say an above average offensive line, 2 good wideouts, really no tight end now, but, you know, it is the way it is. 1 stellar guy on their line. Their linebackers are okay. And their secondary is really good, but they're probably going to lose Bryce Callahan to free agency because they're not going to have the money to re-sign him. So it's going to be interesting to see what holes pop up because of this trade. And I'm going to be interested to see how they go about stemming those holes, because if they can't, I don't think they're going to make it very deep in the playoffs, especially if they lose Melvin Gordon too. Like, don't get me wrong, not that the dude from UNC is bad. Like, that dude is a baller and he could be an RB1 and have no one fighting for touches. But Gordon just gives them that extra dynamic, you know, and he wants to stay. But the reality is, how much money are you going to have bringing in Russell Wilson? So I'm just interested to see how they're going to fill the holes. At the end of the day, I do think that Denver won the trade just because Russell is a top 10 quarterback. But I think it's closer than people are making it. Like, I think Seattle came real close to winning this trade.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Denver I believe had a top 10 pick, if not a top 15 pick, right? So, I mean, Seattle could take their quarterback of the future. They could take someone else next year. They're going to have 2 firsts next year, I believe. You know, another second this year, another second next year. So, you know, they're going to be able to fill some holes these next 2 years in the draft. And they got a good return for Russell Wilson. And Wilson is worth it, but you know, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, how Denver goes about trying to fill out the rest of the roster with the complications that Russell Wilson brings via the cap. So I'll be interested to see who they sign in free agency, because I don't know. I think that it was the right move, but if it doesn't work out and Wilson declines again, they are going to be hating themselves for the next 3 years.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, this is a really big, like, risky move. This is really like the biggest move they've made since they got Peyton Manning. Like,
yeah.
And this is the type of move you're like, hey, I think we can compete. We're ready all around. But you are right. Like, now that they've traded for Russell, there's a lot of holes out there. So we're going to have to see how this kind of goes. But I mean, also bringing in that kind of guy shows your team that you are committed to trying to win. And that can also just start a fire in the organization.
I mean, Wilson elevates everyone around him. So even the guys we're not talking about now, they might be stars in 4 months, you know? You just don't know. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how it progresses, see who the quarterback for the Seahawks will be, et cetera. This was a fascinating trade. I mean, I think it was one of the biggest trades in recent NFL history, if not all of NFL history. I mean, this thing was ginormous. And, you know, it's going to impact these teams for 3, 5, 10 years. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think so. Let's go on to the next bit of news. This one hits home for you personally. So Carson Wentz was traded to Washington, and Indy got 2 third-round picks and a second-round pick swap. And Washington is going to pay Wentz's entire contract. Obviously, Washington receives Carson Wentz, and they also get a second-round pick swap. I'm gonna be honest. I think the Colts win in this one, because Washington was very desperate for a quarterback. I mean, they called for Patrick Mahomes.
They called every team.
They called everybody, and they end up taking this. To me, this is like very premature. Like they're just like, hey, we want a quarterback now. We're just gonna go get one, so we at least know what we're dealing with going into the draft. I guess it's I don't know. This is like a fast move in my opinion, but hey, I guess you do what you got to do. But yeah, overall, I think this is a win for Indy. I know they don't have a quarterback right now, but I think they will have their guys soon enough, especially this off season. So Chelsea, what do you think? This is really for you, this is set up for you.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Wentz's stat line last year, his touchdown to interception ratio was not terrible. Just to put it frankly, it wasn't. But if you look at those interceptions, most of them were terrible. And if you look at the interceptions that were dropped, he should have had more than that. His completion percentage was not good. He would not take the check down, et cetera, et cetera. I saw a lot of hate online saying that the Colts got fleeced. I don't agree, personally speaking.
No way.
We got the third round pick that we got this year, because we don't have a first, right? So people are hating on the Colts because they gave up a conditional second that turned into a first. It turned into a first. We gave up, that, and then we gave up another pick. So people are hating on us because we aren't getting the first back. But if you know anything about football and you know anything about Carson Wentz, you know that no team was going to get a first for him. That's just how it is. So the people that are saying that, in my opinion, are just kind of prematurely looking at the trade, because that was not going to happen regardless, unless it was some team that we just absolutely fleeced, like the Giants or something, like they'd have to be super desperate. So I think that take is premature. So the first third round pick is for this year. So we have no first. So we have a second, 2/3, and then, fourth, fifth, whatever. And then the second round pick, or the third round pick for next year, turns into a second round pick if Carson Wentz plays 70% of the snaps, which is what happened to our second round pick last year. He played the entire season, turned into a first. So if Carson Wentz doesn't have any major injury issues, it will probably be 1/3 this year and 1/2 next year, which gives us a first, 2 seconds, a third, which, Carson is going to be the starter. Like Heineke has his role and his place, but let's be honest, even if Carson is only slightly above average, Heineke's not going to steal the job away from him, most likely. So that's probably going to turn into a second. The second round pick swap, we moved up, I think it was 6 spots in the second round, which we can then use that pick for trade bait, maybe if we decide to trade up into the first to take a quarterback. But honestly, I think that the biggest part of this entire trade was that Washington paid his entire contract, because his entire contract was $28 million.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money for a guy that's really only slightly above average. Like there are guys who are a lot better than him that are making less money. So what people fail to consider is that Washington paid his entire contract. The Colts now have over $70 million in cap space this year, which is, first place by a mile. Now, knowing our GM and how he kind of has some tendencies to be cheap sometimes, will we spend the money? We'll see. But I mean, I feel like what we got for him was pretty good. The Colts are a small market team. Whenever news about them comes up, people slaughter us because, that's just the reality of the fandom of the NFL. So people are like, they have no quarterback now. Okay. I do not think, number one, that our GM, our owner, or our head coach would trade away the starter if they did not have a plan in place. Like they wouldn't just trade away the only viable starter on the team unless they had a plan. So I trust that they have a plan. Is it going to be a plan that I like? That's to be seen. I may or may not.
Jimmy G.
Yes, no. But I mean, Carson Wentz going to Washington. Washington needed a starter, and Ron Rivera is a great coach. So, who knows? Everyone's been saying for years, oh, the Colts are going to revive him. The Eagles are going to revive him. Now everyone's saying Washington's going to revive him. And, it's, a matter to be seen later. But personally, I think that the Colts won this trade. If I'm just looking at it unbiased, I thought we were only going to get 1 pick for him, and we got 2 and a pick swap and an entire contract paid. So I think that we got a good return. Obviously, it sucks that we don't have a first because of him, but at least Carson Wentz the impact that he's making on the team has only lasted 1 year. Like at least we didn't give up 2 firsts, and it hurts us next year too. Like we gave up 1. It is what it is. It didn't work out. He had a chance to work out. He was in a good system, had a good head coach he's familiar with. Didn't work out. You take the L and you move on. That's just kind of how it is. But it'll be very interesting to see who the Colts quarterback is, because thought there was a chance that Aaron Rodgers was going to. He didn't. Thought there was a chance Russell Wilson was going to. And, half the reason that Washington was so desperate for Carson Wentz, they offered more first-round picks for Russell Wilson than Denver did. They offered 3, and Seattle refused to trade him in the NFC. So they offered more for Russell Wilson and still didn't get him. So their desperation level had just reached a high. Because let's be honest, outside of like Derek Carr and Jimmy G, Carson Wentz is far and above better than any of the other viable free agent quarterbacks on the market right now.
Yeah.
So, it's a desperation move. And because of the desperation move, we got, a better recoup of resources than we probably should have. So I'm happy with it. We'll see what happens. I'm just really hoping it's not Jimmy G, because his contract is literally the same and he's worse. And he just had shoulder surgery. So I would just rather not. But, that's to be seen. No Wilson, no Rodgers coming to Indy. So it'll be interesting. I swear if we end up with Marcus Mariota, I might just be very angry. But it is what it is.
Well, I personally think there's a chance you end up with the next guy we're going to talk about here. There might be a chance here. I don't know. But the next guy we're going to talk about here.
You mean 0.00001% chance?
I have my reasons, I guess, but we'll go to it. So the next big news, and this is the most recent. We've kind of went in order of recency, which is pretty cool.
I did that on purpose.
Good job, Chelsea. She is great at setting that up. So the next person we're going to talk about, Deshaun Watson. I mean, who hasn't talked about him? You look at Twitter, he's got 104K tweets about him.
I think we've talked about him in 10 episodes. And he didn't even play last year.
Literally, that's it's impressive almost how much the media's talked about him without even seeing him step on the field. Anyways, let's just get into it. So the other day, which was yesterday, March 11th of 2022, Deshaun Watson was legally cleared of his sexual assault claims. He still has 22 civil cases to go through, which, it's not to say those aren't a big deal. They are, but it's harder to get out of than this kind of deal was. Apparently, Deshaun was very open to having police search him and stuff. I don't know. He's still got a lot to prove of himself, and he's going to have a lot to prove of himself for the rest of his life. And we'll see, what happens. We'll never know whether it actually happened or not, to be honest. Like, we personally do not know him, and we will never know. But anyways, aside from all of that, I'm going to just, I do want to get across really quick. I'm like not thrilled with I don't know, we kind of the way that people kind of feel about players, they can, I don't know. I think the part that I struggle with is okay, I want to cheer for my team, or I want to cheer for these players and stuff, but it's hard to when you see okay, they're getting away with this and this.
But is he, innocent until proven guilty, right? Not that, that's the most sound ideology in the world, but not to say that things couldn't have happened, because the probability of at least one of those being true, I think, is pretty high. But ultimately, if you can't prove him guilty, you are innocent until proven guilty. But that's not to say that his character has not been stained and that his reputation has not been tainted. Exactly. Even if he did absolutely nothing, he's forever going to be looked at differently by the world. And that's just kind of the reality of it.
Yeah, I agree. So, but we won't talk too much about that. That's just briefly, I kind of want to go over that. It's just I'm not it doesn't thrill me to cheer for players with this kind of like with that kind of reputation. But like you said, innocent till
Me
proven
either.
guilty, and so we don't know. We don't know, and we will
It's a
never know.
moral back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
It's a tug of war between how I feel about this thing and my passion for sports. And that's going to be a tug of war for, every fan base, whoever he goes to,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be that way. And,
Exactly.
whether that ever changes, is still to be seen.
Mm-hmm. So let's just get into it, though. We've got basically the teams that are interested in him, or at least have expressed interest, have been the Panthers, Seahawks, Colts, Saints, Vikings, and Browns.
And everyone else.
Basically everyone. Yeah. We say the teams that have expressed interest, but also like who hasn't?
Like the Ravens and the Chiefs and like the Jags, probably not. And the Chargers.
And that's true. I will say this. I have seen a lot of news about the Panthers going after him. I've seen the Seahawks too and other people, but it seems like the Panthers have been the hardest chasing him. Just as a update, or just kind of to remind people who may not know, or to educate people, David Tepper, when he took over this team, like has been very adamant about wanting a franchise quarterback. That is the biggest thing on his mind, is getting a franchise quarterback that can take them to the playoffs and Super Bowls and whatever. And it sounds to me like he is desperate for one. He will do anything to get one. Who isn't, though? What owner in their right mind wouldn't be?
Hey, I mean, you're looking at a quarterback-less fan right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in the same boat.
But like, look at it this way. Even like in some of the worst years of like Peyton Manning being at the Colts, right? I bet you they were selling out all these games, and there was always a hope they could win it, even if like they played bad, because they had Peyton Manning. And that's how
Peyton's
big of a
first
deal.
season, I think the Colts went like 1-15.
Exactly.
Something terrible,
So it's just like, quarterback, a franchise quarterback is so huge. It is so important because it is the thing that gives you a chance. As bad as the Texans even were when they had Deshaun Watson, they had a chance. And I'm not saying they were always bad. They actually had, they made it to what,
2015.
The second, second round of the playoffs.
Jaguars. It might have been a little after that.
So I'm just saying, I don't blame Tepper's like desire to have that, because the franchise thought they had one with Cam, but that I think went a lot shorter than they wanted it to. And now they're just stuck in quarterback limbo, paying so much money to people who aren't even playing on their team, or just like, it's just a mess. So overall, for the Panthers side, I understand why they're so desperate to get him. Like they are pushing this weekend and probably beyond to get Deshaun Watson. And they're not in Houston's, conference, so Houston probably be okay with the team he's going to. But the thing is, does Deshaun even want to go to the Panthers? Because he does have to sign off, because he is on, like, he has the choice.
I read a report that apparently he would waive the clause for the Panthers. Don't know its accuracy. I'd have to find it again, but I've been reading reports that have been saying that. So if it's true, there's a chance.
I also think that if the Colts found a way to offer him, like,
don't give me
there'd
hope,
be a
bro.
chance. I'm just saying, I could see, honestly, if I was a player objectively, I would think the Colts would be a better organization, like a more appealing right now, because they have a thing called an offensive line. I don't know if, Panther fans have ever heard of that.
But, it's all right.
You guys like action, and, like you have obviously the pieces to compete. I think the Seahawks also make sense. I mean, they've had a history of winning, but I kind of wonder if Deshaun would be like, well, they're kind of losing a lot of people. Bobby Wagner just got cut. Like, he was not even told he was cut, which just blows my mind that he was not told.
I cannot believe they could not find a trade partner for him. You're telling me you could not get a 7th round pick for one of the best linebackers this decade? I just don't buy it.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe they wanted to cut him thinking, all right, let him decide, but whatever. Seahawks, I kind of can see them being like an attractive destination, but like, I don't know. The Saints, Makes sense. Do they even have money though? Didn't they spend like
No, they
so
have like
much
$2
money?
million in cap.
Literally, I don't see how they're gonna be able to get him unless
That's
they get,
Alvin Kamara.
yeah, and Alvin Kamara's in trouble right now. So I mean, like, would Deshaun want to go there? He might. Yet again, I also hate the Saints, so maybe I'm biased, but like also you have to understand, like, I think some of that makes sense. Vikings make sense. They can compete. I really think they can. But honestly, Kirk Cousins had some elite numbers last year and they still found ways to lose. I don't know. And then the Browns. I mean, the Browns should have been good. We have no idea like what they want to do with Baker. Like he's just kind of like apparently he was
Apparently, Tampa
injured.
Bay has called about Baker Mayfield,
They do need a quarterback, you know.
but Baker Mayfield from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield, that's painful.
What about Deshaun to Tampa? Do they I don't know if they have like
Oh
anything.
gosh, I hope not.
They're just going to
That
continue
would
their reign.
be the worst ever.
It would be a lot. So,
Oh man, please
yeah,
no.
I he goes to New England. He continues the Patriots reign.
I would physically throw up in my mouth.
It could happen. They just say, sorry, Mac Jones.
Frick you, Mac.
Hey, if the Patriots are like, we'll trade you Mac Jones and a bunch of other stuff for, like, I could see it. But also Bill Belichick, I don't think has ever done any
I
crazy
mean, Bill
trades like that.
Belichick is also letting JC Jackson walk, top 10 corner in the league. So I don't really foresee him doing as much crazy things this offseason after he spent the most in free agency money he had spent in his entire coaching career, I believe. And like two of the players panned out of like seven.
Literally, and
So,
they got destroyed by like 40 points in in the
and they lost
playoffs.
to the
So
Bills like real bad two
yeah,
out of three times.
exactly.
So I do not foresee Bill Belichick doing that again.
Yeah, no, we'll see what happens with them. But yeah, I think these teams we have listed here make sense. The teams like speculation, like Tampa or New England, it's harder to see, but who knows? Who knows? The Rams could find some way to be like, we'll trade, something out there. I'd be like, goodness, you have nothing left to trade.
Double
Like,
quarterback, Stafford and Deshaun.
I don't know, crazy stuff. But
Man,
Chelsea, what do you think about all this? Do you think that one of these teams is going to end up getting him?
I could see him going to the Seahawks, but also I could see him not going to the Seahawks. You know, like they're
Mm-hmm.
losing people, but they got all these picks, but they have no O line, but they have, DK Metcalf and, a bunch of other people there. But like they don't really have a defense, but, they have Shelby Harris now. So, I could see the argument going either way for that. I could see him going to the Vikings. But if he were to go to the Vikings would have to find someone to take Kirk Cousins, like $30-40 million a year contract, which is going to be difficult to do. But I think he'd fit in well there. I mean, you have Thielen and you Cook, and you have, a bunch of other guys, the baller from LSU, can't remember his name right now, but you have him. I mean, your defense is not terrible. I mean, your O-line is like, okay. I mean, I think that there's some pieces there. The Browns, I don't think will happen because I don't think the Browns are smart enough to trade for Deshaun Watson. So I'd say throw them out of there.
It's also
I
in
could see him.
conference.
I could see him going to the Panthers. I could. I think the probability of him going somewhere in the NFC is higher than him staying in the AFC, even if it's out of their division. And I think the Panthers could probably assemble a decent trade package for him. It's just a matter of if Tepper wants to swing it. Do you trust him? I know that, Antonio Brown and, some of the other guys that, didn't play for a year, like they came back and quite frankly, they were bad. Le'Veon Bell, like the guys that got in trouble, took a year off, came back. Everyone expected them to be, top 5, and they just were not good. Obviously quarterback is different. Like it's real hard to forget how, the fundamentals of being a quarterback. But, part of me wonders, like, what if Deshaun isn't the same? What if it takes him a year or two to get back to arguably his top 5 quarterback ranking?
That's
now,
true.
I think there's a greater chance that he ends up more or less being the same. But, there's always a chance. man, I could see him going to the Colts, but I don't think we have the assets to acquire him unless we gave up someone real big like Darius Leonard or something like that. And I don't think that the Colts could stomach trading a cornerstone player in their division. I just don't think that they could do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the team with the highest probability of getting him is probably Seattle because they already have good pieces there. But let's just play with this for a little bit, right? If he goes to the Panthers, your favorite team of all time, what would you give up for him?
What would I give up for him? So personally, I'm seeing a lot of things. The least I'm gonna be honest. This is actually I mentioned this, but thinking back to it, Chelsea, when we talked about this, like I would say this is my least offer. Our 2 firsts and Brian Burns. Truthfully, what you're gonna have to probably give up is like that's what I'd want to give up. That would be like the least amount of sting, least amount of holes breaking up. And Brian Burns is a stud. Like he's a defensive stud and he can play. What would probably have to be given up is like 3 firsts, Brian Burns, maybe JC Horn, because they need corners. Maybe like Derek Brown too, even thrown in there. It'd be a chunk of their defense, I think, is what they'd have to give up. Yeah. I just don't really think, except for Christian McCaffrey, like Houston's going to take anybody on the Panthers offense except Christian and DJ Moore. Literally the rest of them, like Robbie Anderson just got signed to a contract. Are they going to want to take on that contract after he had probably one of his worst years? No. And, there's others, but I think that like Chuba Hubbard and Terrence Marshall, but I don't know. I think they'd only take like McCaffrey or DJ Moore. And to be honest, like if you're going to trade for Deshaun, you got to give him something to throw to. Like you can't, I don't know. So I don't really know if you can really afford to give up any offensive pieces. You can afford it more on the defensive side, which Houston still needs. They need literally everything. And like we said, JC Horn might be on the table. I don't think they would give up Jeremy Chin, the safety, but I don't know. I think that that's probably what you'll have to give up is like 3 firsts and like 2 or 3 starters. It's going to be a lot, to be honest. But what I would want to give up, and I think you could I would love to get away with is 2 firsts and Brian Burns, which is still expensive. Don't get me wrong, but look at the Denver trade. Look how much Denver had to give up to get Russell Wilson. So I don't know. That's my thought.
5 picks and 3 players.
Yeah. So
I mean, one of the players was a throw-in, and honestly, one of the picks was a throw-in, but still.
Yeah. And it makes sense because they need quarterbacks or whatever. I don't think we can get rid of our quarterbacks because 1, Matt Rule loves PJ Walker. 2, Sam Darnold has $20 million. That's how much we're paying him. And so there'd literally be no reason to trade Darnold to Houston because at least if he's here, you're using him and not paying him to play for another team, a la Teddy Bridgewater, that you're paying money to play for another team. Do you really want to do that with 2 guys? No. So, yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that with how much Seattle got, getting 3 players, 5 picks for 1 player, essentially. Deshaun Watson is under 30, in my opinion, more talented than Russell Wilson, and in my opinion, a better quarterback. So if they gave up that much for a guy over 30 who had one of the worst seasons of his career, there's an argument that you're going to have to give up more than that to land Deshaun. And, again, it's, what are you willing to gamble? Are you willing to gamble 3 years of 1st-round picks to arguably get your franchise guy? Now, a lot of teams would say yes. If you believe in someone, you trust someone, quarterback is the most important position in the league. And ultimately, you're not going to win a Super Bowl with an average, slightly above average, or worse than average quarterback. That's just the reality of the league right now. But I worry about how much the trade would decimate Carolina, because Carolina already has holes. And the players that they would have to trade would be players that are stemming holes currently. So if they traded those players, Carolina is going to have more holes. And also, Carolina only has one starting offensive lineman that is good in Moton. Everyone else is not good. So if I was going to do it, if I was David Tepper and I was going to trade for Deshaun, like in the Russell Wilson, they gave up 2 firsts, 2 seconds. If I'm David Tepper, I'm trying to keep those second rounders. Like, I would rather give up more first rounders and keep my second rounders, because you never know, you might be able to trade for someone to get more of those. Like, I want to keep, if it's going to require firsts, I don't want to give up seconds. Like, at least let me keep my seconds. But I mean, Russell costs 2 firsts and 2 seconds. So I'm going to go with 3 firsts, Robbie Anderson, and CMC for Watson. And people are going to go, CMC, why? When CMC is healthy, CMC is a top 3 running back in the league. And it's not close. Like, the only people he's close to are like Cook, Chubb, Taylor, and Henry. Like, when he's on, he's spectacular. But are you willing to take the gamble, right? He's had injury issues, hasn't played a lot. I just think with his recent injury history and with his cap hit, if you're going to trade him now before he gets hurt again, even with how good he is. And that creates a hole at running back. Like, yes, you have Chuba Hubbard, but he got a lot of touches last year. And honestly, I was underwhelmed. But that's not to say that you can't take a running back, another one in the draft, or pick someone up in free agency. So, you can kind of recoup that. Robbie Anderson, I know that you said like he just got paid. Why would they want to pay him? Because he's better than everyone else on their team. The only person who's relatively close is Brandon Cooks, and Brandon Cooks is kind of washed now. Like,
kind of like the same player, Robbie and Brandon Cooks.
Brandon Cooks only looked as good as he looked because he was on the Texans. If he was on a team with a loaded wide receiver core, like, he would be a wide receiver 3, a wide receiver 4. That's what
he was in, what is it, in LA?
Right. And not to say that he isn't good. Like, he's still good, but he's at the tail end of his career at this point, and he's stuck on a dead team. So you want to revive your wide receiver core. I feel like if you give up CMC, I feel like CMC's potential makes up for Robbie Anderson. Like, I feel like you can keep DJ Moore if you throw in CMC, because CMC, his potential is so much higher than DJ Moore's. I feel like if he exceeds or hits that potential, it makes up for it. Like, Robbie Anderson would automatically be a wide receiver 1 on the Texans, in my opinion. Like, some might say that it would be close between him and Cooks, and Cooks had a decent year last year for being on the Texans. Like, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I think that Robbie is still better. He's a jump ball guy. He can spread the field with the long, jump balls. But honestly, I think that this package that I put together of 3 firsts, Robbie Anderson and CMC, I think is me being a little cheap. Like, I think that Houston would want even more than that. Like you were saying, Chris, they would probably want a defensive starter 2 or another pick. I mean, they could potentially, if you're a team, do you give up, 3 firsts and 2 starters, or do you give up 5 firsts and 1 starter and save the rest of your team? Can you imagine if someone gave up 5 first-round picks? Imagine not having a first-round pick for 5 years. That would be awful.
At the Rams.
Awful. Yeah. So, honestly, I think that your package is like, please take it. Do you like us, right? I think my package is, all right, well, we'll deal. We'll wheel and deal a little bit. But I think what the Texans are really going to want is like 3 firsts, 3 seconds, and probably at least 3 or 4 starting caliber players.
Sam Darnold's salary, maybe, if they're feeling.
It's pretty appealing.
If they had the, oh my gosh, blanking on it. If they had their old coach, maybe we could get away with it. But
dude, if Bill O'Brien was the GM and head coach of the Texans, the Colts might actually get Deshaun Watson. He was so bad, like the worst. So I just worst
mean,
head coach I've
the
ever seen.
Arizona like robbed it. I mean, they found like a way to win games, but I think a lot of that was high end talent like JJ Watt and Deshaun.
They got Nuke and JJ Watt from them. They fleeced them not once, but twice. That takes skill.
Yeah. But then Arizona always ends up disappointed still.
That's true. But hey, it'll be interesting to see where Deshaun ends up. If he ends up at the Panthers, we may or may not consider getting matching Deshaun Watson jerseys. So we all match when we go to the game. But don't give me hope that he comes to the Colts. It's too late because I already have hope and I want him. But we just, man, we'd have to give up. We'd have to give up someone really good, and it would pain me, Like if the Colts were going to do a trade, they'd have to give up.
Bye, Darius.
They'd have to give up what? 3 firsts probably. And one of them wouldn't be in this year, right? Probably at least 2 seconds. I think that they could swing Braden Smith, our right tackle, but I would really rather not. Please not DeForest Buckner or Leonard or Nelson.
Like I said, bye, Darius. Bye, Buckner. If you got Deshaun.
I just don't think that. I think that our front office is too cheap to trade away the good things they already have. So that's why I think we won't get them. But
fair enough. Well, now that we kind of got that, that's been some of the biggest news, especially today. But we have a few side notes we did want to talk about. So Amari Cooper was traded for a 5th and 6th round pick. What? We don't understand.
Browns, who allegedly are letting Jarvis Landry request a trade now. How are you Dallas and you don't a 5th and a 6th round pick? The dude's arguably a top 10 wide receiver. He's only had 2 years in his entire career where he hasn't had a 1,000-yard season. How do you pick Michael Gallup, who tore his ACL, who is a good player, but is hurt, over Cooper because of his $20 million cap hit, but you're the one who paid him? How do you not get at least a second? Dallas, what are you doing?
I don't know what Dallas is doing. They had a good offense, and they really probably feel like they should have just won this year. And yeah, they should have. There was no excuse to not win this year, and they lost. And they lost because they
always do.
Literally, as Stephen A says, they will find a way to disappoint you. And just like, I don't understand what they're doing with Amari Cooper. That just doesn't make sense. But moving on, we've also got Max Crosby getting a contract extension for 4 years, $95 million. He's a defensive end for the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm sorry, I have to think about it because, all the moves and stuff. Literally, what team stays in their city anymore?
The Colts were the Baltimore Colts at first.
Exactly. So. And so
I guess Baltimore.
Cool little thing that he got his extension on his 2-year anniversary of his sobriety. So congratulations to him.
Congratulations, Crosby. You deserve it. He's really good. He's a foundational piece on that team, and he will be for years to come.
Exactly. And then obviously we talked about it a little bit with Seattle earlier, but Bobby Wagner being cut by Seattle, and they didn't even talk to him about it. Just what's with these teams? What I don't understand.
Humanity, man.
Like, I think they're scared of them. I mean, Bobby Wagner's a big dude, but like, do you really think he's just going to attack you or get so? I just don't understand. Like, you've cut so much. I don't know. I don't get why Seattle would not tell him about it. He's given so much to their organization. He was one of the big reasons they won a Super Bowl. They have a Super Bowl. Exactly. So just to see the fact he claimed he was not told that this was going to happen. That just makes no sense to me. I'm like, what is going on in Seattle? You're trading away Russell Wilson. You're doing this and that. I'm just like, you're trying to start new, but like, just because you start new doesn't mean you'll be better than you were,
Yeah,
So
it's not like Bobby Wagner has been one of the best linebackers for the last decade and has carried that defense on his back once the Legion of Boom left or anything.
I mean, the best guess I can do is, are they trying to do him a favor by being like, all right, you can pick what team you want to go to now? Like, are they trying to do that? Like, it just
If that's their reasoning, that is such a cop out. Like,
you could still tell them you're gonna do it. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
like it's just a respect thing. Like, I get that the NFL is a business, but this dude has served your organization for a long time.
You made a lot of jersey sales off of this man, and a lot of
Yeah,
people watch your
at
game
least
because of this
tell him
man.
you're moving on. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they just did him dirty, in my opinion.
Maybe
If
they.
I'm a Seahawks fan, I don't know how to feel. I traded Russell Wilson, but I got all this stuff back. And it's like, yeah, you got all this stuff. Oh, wait, never mind. We cut Bobby Wagner and didn't tell him. LOL.
Yeah, I have no idea what they're doing. Like, they probably have some plan of a rebuild, but something I've learned about rebuilds is just because you have a plan doesn't mean you'll even follow it. A la the
Mm-hmm.
Panthers, they say they have a plan, but good lord,
And then signed Sam Darnold.
and then Teddy Bridgewater to 3 years, 60 million. And so something I've just
That
learned
was
is
smart.
just
Super
because
smart.
you say you have a plan doesn't mean you're actually going to follow it. And so I don't know. Rebuilds are sus. I think at times I was like, maybe the Rams need to rebuild. They didn't. They just upgraded.
They just spent all of the money in the whole league, and now they have their Super Bowl, and that's what matters, I guess.
They literally did not cheap out. They spent every bit of money and picks that they could to get their guys, because they know if you're going to be if you're going to build a fan base in LA, you've got to make yourself entertaining. You're competing with the Lakers, you're competing with the Dodgers, you're competing with like all the, it's LA.
Don't forget about the Clippers, who no one cares about.
You're not competing with the Clippers. I'm sorry. They are literally like, by you moving there, you've already beaten out the Clippers.
That's fair.
So yeah, I don't know what Seattle's doing, but either way, this will be a very interesting NFL season. I'm excited for it. I was glad we got to talk a lot about a lot of news, because recently it's been a little bit dry, so we were ready today.
We were. And I'm sure everyone else has been too. I mean, every time I put my phone on silent mode, I unsilent it and it's like bam, 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 like NFL news. Because I have like, 5 or 6 sports apps. So they all report it at the same time. So my phone is like bzz, 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 bzz.
Exactly.
Can't wait for my phone to buzz 27 times when the Colts signed Jimmy G. Oh, I'm so excited. It's going to be great.
Oh,
her trade for Jimmy G.
It's going to happen.
Because you can't. Because it has to be that way, right? It just has to. I swear, if we take our 3rd round pick that we got and flip it for Jimmy G, I might just.
It's going to happen.
I'd rather give up more for Derek Carr than one thing for Jimmy G. I would rather Mitchell Trubisky over Jimmy G. I would rather Sam Ehlinger over Jimmy G. Don't give me Jimmy G, please. Okay, maybe not Sam Ehlinger. I'd probably take Jimmy G over him.
Jimmy G like literally showed in the playoffs that he's not terrible, but he's just not.
He can win in a mediocre fashion. I want you to win in a spectacular fashion.
I mean, I guess it's like, as long as they win, but the truth is, like, man, they had some opportunity.
Excuse.
If it were not for Green Bay spectacularly screwing up on special teams, and and the fact that the 49ers special team getting that touchdown, just Green Bay choking overall, if it were not for that, like, the 49ers would have not made it past.
If Green Bay would have played to their potential, they would have crushed the 49ers.
And I think if
Dallas, if it hadn't been snowing, like, they just.
If Dallas didn't just melt down, that's why I told, like, the 49ers, man, they make you play ugly. Like, you never play well against the 49ers. Like, literally teams don't.
In that rain game, we won by like 28.
So well, there you go. So the Colts just need to play them all year,
I don't like, Jimmy G has proven that he's a winner, right? But you can be a winner and still be mediocre. That is what he is. I think Carson Wentz is a little better.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I mean, it's a similar argument for Manning, though. I mean, Manning got us 2 Super Bowls. He took down Brady. But like the vast majority of his career, like he was quite simply underwhelming. Like that's just kind of how it is.
If there are any Eli Manning fans, I've literally just pissed all of them off and they've left
I
by
am
now.
an
But
Eli Manning fan, and I'm just saying, if you want someone who is devoted to the Manning family, I am your person, and I am saying this. Like he just
yeah, look, I don't
no
actually.
Jimmy G.
I do think Eli's better than Jimmy G. It's kind of a joke,
Oh
but
yeah,
there
I
is like
agree.
a. Anyways, that's a whole different topic for another day. But I think we're gonna go ahead and do our outro here. So Chelsea, would you mind leading us out of here?
Yeah, for sure. So thanks for listening, guys. Tune back in next week for more content and follow us on our social medias. We will be consistently posting all of the best and latest news right when it drops. So follow us on there. I changed our Twitter handle. So it is now Launch Codes FB football, but FB because football was too long, because of course it was. So follow us on Twitter at Launch Codes FB and on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Launch Codes Football. I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Chris.
And we will see you next week. Hopefully, Jimmy G is not on the Colts then.
We'll see. All right. See you guys.
Bye.